Just before Christmas, I released a video about the TrimUI Smart Pro S, and I really like this little console, even though I still think TrimUI sounds like the interface for a man's intimate grooming product. Now, with virtually every console out there, except for some of the Android ones, I've gone and installed custom firmware, because I think, in general, it elevates the experience. But I haven't been able to do that this time, because this is far too new a unit, and the custom firmware isn't available. LitNXT is coming, I think Newly is coming, there's an alpha build of that floating around somewhere, but you can't install it using Windows, which is a bit like having a USB stick that only works if you already have the files on it. But it is an alpha build, of course, I'm sure they'll fix that. The most interesting custom operating system for the original TrimUI Smart Pro, though, was Crossmix. Now, officially, Crossmix for the TrimUI Smart Pro S doesn't exist. The developer hasn't released it. The hardware is too new. The drivers need work. And it could be months before we see a proper, stable release. I mean, look, go back onto GitHub. Have a look at the project. Have a look at the last release of Crossmix. It was this time last year. In fact, now it's January. It was technically 2 years ago, except it wasn't actually 2 years ago. It was 12 months and a few days. I feel like I'm falling into some sort of temporal paradox here. Let's just say it's been a while. But there is actually a way to experience Crossmix on the TrimUI Smart Pro S right now. And that's with one of these Surwish cards from LitNXT. This is a paid-for card that costs around about $50 for the 256 gig version. But with that, you get a completely curated collection of games, you get Portmaster and ports pre-installed, you get an improved version of Crossmix, which is actually built on an older stable version of Crossmix. And what they've done is manually put in all of the drivers that make it work with the new S model, including proper support for the new clickable L3 and R3 thumbsticks. And that's something that firmware ports would often break. Not only that, but they've put this on a SanDisk Ultra card, and those are some of the cards that people always recommend for gaming handhelds because, by and large, they are very dependable. If you're looking for a purely pick-up and play experience, then this really is something to consider. Now, my initial reaction to seeing that these things were going for $50 was that it was quite a lot of money to spend, but let's compare that to the standard 256 gig card that you can get with the TrimUI Smart Pro S. And suddenly you'll find that it might not be as bad a deal at all, because the original card is put on a fairly generic card, and I know at least one reviewer had to replace that card because it wouldn't play games at the right speed. And whilst that only costs $30, you're going to have to buy a new reputable card just to back everything onto for another, $20? Just in case that first card fails. Now, LitNXT approached me to review this particular version of Crossmix. They sent me a card, they sent me a second unit, but I haven't been paid at all, and they're not going to get to see anything up front. They don't have any editorial control over what I say. And honestly, that gives me a sense of power that I'm just not comfortable with. And though I thought this should be quite straightforward, you put two operating systems side by side, and then you play a game of spot the difference, what I didn't expect to discover was just how much engineering work had gone into making Crossmix possible. Because what they've done here is actually very impressive, even if it does come with a few quirks that we'll talk about later. Now, I've seen these Surwish cards talked about by other reviewers for quite some time. It was when I first got into this hobby, it was one of the things that I was considering on the Brick, I think it was. What I haven't seen so far is a real deep dive into the pros and cons of both systems. So that's what I wanted to attempt here. So I spent the last week or so testing everything that I could think of. It's been my Christmas break, by the way. I haven't really had a break at Christmas. I've just been playing with various different handheld devices. I've ignored probably quite expensive presents that people have bought me this year, and instead I've been checking emulator configurations and watching the same God of War cutscenes so many times that it's now burned into the retinas of my eyes, just like the last image that somebody sees before they die. And I've been obsessing over cloud rendering in Goldeneye, which I think just proves the point, proves the national stereotype that we Brits are obsessed with weather. And while Surwish have done a truly impressive job here, there are a couple of things that you're going to want to be aware of if you're thinking of purchasing one of these cards. So what's the final verdict going to be? Will this just mix you up and make you cross? Or will this card make your Surwishes come true? Let's start off with performance, because if this were simple, if this were just a case that Crossmix turned the device into an emulation powerhouse that made the stock firmware look like it was running on a potato, none of the rest of this video would matter. But the fact is you get a very similar performance across both of these systems. And the benefit of Crossmix really is that you've got a lot more configuration and a lot more options that you can tweak. If something goes wrong, you can fix it, pretty much. I started off with God of War Chains of Olympus, and I know that anybody who watches handheld reviews is probably sick and tired of seeing the opening few seconds of this game. But it's a really good benchmark for what a system can do. Even on the original PSP hardware, this game dipped to the equivalent of about 20 frames per second, which back in 2007 we didn't call lag, we called that cinematic ambition. But if the device can handle God of War at PSP frame rates, then we should give both of these operating systems a massive tick in the "it plays PSP" box. The good news is that both operating systems handled this comfortably with a 2x resolution. Both require the 30 frame per second cheat on for slightly smoother gameplay, especially during particle effects, but both slowed down in exactly the same places that the PSP would have done. Now, I've heard some people say that that's a failure of the chip or the RAM. It's not. We are getting PSP played at twice the resolution, but matching the original hardware's frame rate. And we can see that more closely with GTA Liberty City Stories. Driving fast through the city usually stresses the CPU, but here you get no hitching, no texture pop-ins on buildings, and perfect audio sync on both systems. So whilst you don't need Crossmix for a raw performance boost, that isn't really what the main advantage is. What it offers instead is a significant quality of life improvement. The stock operating system just doesn't have these things. Now, I've always liked the look of the stock operating system, especially on the brick, but there is definitely something a little bit more utilitarian about it over Crossmix, which gives you dynamic background images and custom icons. Both systems boot in around about 25 seconds, but when you're navigating menus, I actually found that Crossmix was a lot more responsive and didn't lag when it was loading in box art. There is a big however at this point, though, because Crossmix ships with two bugs that I would suggest you jump on straight away. First is the auto resume feature. It is a lovely idea. You turn the console back on and you're back in your game. Crossmix is configured to resume your game at boot. It mimics, I suppose, the Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, in this iteration of Crossmix, it is a terrible execution, and instead it mimics a nudist at the North Pole. It just freezes. This requires a hard reset, so go into Systems Tools and disable the resume at boot immediately. The standard autosave on exit still works perfectly fine, so you're not going to lose your progress. Now, the stock operating system doesn't have this problem at all, because it doesn't even have this ambition, let alone this feature. The second problem is a little more disappointing, and this is specific to certain games on the Nintendo 64. Now, I tested this with Goldeneye, which is one of those really difficult to games that you put these as stress tests for the system. And on the stock operating system, Goldeneye is basically unplayable. It crashes on boot unless you manually mess around with the emulator cores, and even then you get graphical glitches like missing clouds. Crossmix, on the other hand, gives you more emulators to play with, and actually you can get Goldeneye running fairly well. Again, there are a few graphical problems. I mean, it's not easy to run this game, let's face it. But once you're in the game, at least on certain cores, you aren't able to open the in-game menu. And this is a problem, because that means that you can't easily exit the game, and you've lost your ability to save and load states. You have to use the internal saving and loading mechanism of the Goldeneye game itself, which means you've got to actually finish a level to save your progress, like some sort of primitive hunter-gatherer. Just so you're aware, I did find that if you held the power, the menu, the start and select buttons at the same time, you do get dumped back into the menu. So you're not stuck in the game forever. Now, I should say that this doesn't happen with most games, but there are certain games that need specific emulator configurations. Goldeneye just happens to be one of them, and that's the reason that we use this for a stress test. This isn't actually a fundamental flaw with N64 emulation. It's really an edge case, but you do need to be aware of it. What's happening is that this is a custom branch of Crossmix created by Serwish. This is proper technical work. The standard Crossmix wouldn't run on this device. They've built a bridge between the older stable software and the brand new hardware. And you know what? That is no small feat. A mouse on stilts, now that's small feat. But these custom systems running on older base code occasionally let in bugs where the software doesn't quite line up with the new hardware. The fact that this works at all is incredibly impressive. So to me, these flaws aren't really a deal breaker unless you specifically want to use these features or these games. For most people, the reason to pick up one of these cards is because it's plug in and play, and it means that you can pick up your device, insert your card, turn it on, and you are ready to go. And that isn't just having an operating system in place, but it's also a massive, massive collection of games that are intelligently organized. Now, there's a bit of an elephant in the room here that I just want to address briefly. This card ships with preloaded ROMs, and these ROMs are almost certainly not licensed. This happens an awful lot in the hobby. Manufacturers turn a blind eye to it. I think we reviewers turn a blind eye to it as well, an awful lot. And it's difficult to get evangelical about obtaining games this way when, for so many people, it's the only way to get hold of them, if you've not got a PC, for example. This collection is one of the main selling points of these cards. Now, look, I'm not going to lecture you about the ethics of this, but you just should know what you are buying when you go into this. You should have all of the information at your fingertips. And I'm certainly not advising that you break the law. This is entirely a matter for you. Now, we've got that out of the way. Let's talk about this huge collection of games. Inside the systems, you have proper folder structures with hacks and translations separated out. You also have pre-built franchise collections, so you can find every Turtles game, for example, in one place, regardless of the console. Duplicate regional variants are included if you want to play them, but they're filtered out of the main view. So even though I might have 12 versions of the same game, I only need to be bad at one of them. What you get here, then, is a very easy-to-use system and a collection that somebody's put a genuine amount of time and thought and effort into so that people can actually browse and discover games easily. The 3D libraries, PSP, Dreamcast and PS1, are particularly well curated. All of the heavy hitters are here. You also have comprehensive libraries with 2D consoles as well. All of these contain high-quality, scraped artwork that maintains the correct aspect ratio. There's no stretched images here. I didn't notice any missing boxes. There's just clean, uniform presentation. The only real weak point is the Amiga collection, where the file names are not alphabetically ordered. The only thing in order there is the Chaos engine. As somebody who's collected their own ROM sets together for various different scenarios, the winter evenings just fly by. Those take hours and hours and hours to put together, and this is going to save you just such a long time, and it's worth the price of admission alone. And as well as that, you've got Portmaster, which I know is a fan favourite, and they've already pre-installed and configured a load of games out of the box, things like GTA Vice City, Stardew Valley, Shredder's Revenge. So all you have to do is choose what you want and run it. And this alone is going to save you 10 to 15 hours of configuration time. And that's 10 to 15 hours that you could spend failing to clear the first mountain in Celeste. There is a small annoyance, however, because a few games are set to Chinese. Stardew Valley, Shredder's Revenge, for example, were amongst them. And technically this is an easy fix, but you'll need to navigate the menus blindly or use another guide or ChatGPT or something to find the right settings. I really do have to give Surwitch props, though. They've done a phenomenal job with this collection of games, and the organisation that they've done is just fantastic. And I don't even have that level of sophistication on the devices that I set up myself. And you'd think that a comparison would stop there. This is far and away better than any card that you would buy for the TrimUI Smart Pro S. But the other distinguishing feature of the Surwitch cards is the application ecosystem. Because whilst you've got Portmaster added with this as well, you also have a file manager and a scraper, so you can download any missing box art if you add your own games, regardless of whether the game deserves it or not. You've got an app to change your LEDs, you've got Smart Tools, which gives you control over various different options within the system, and all of this stuff. I mean, some of it's on the original operating system, a lot of it isn't, and when it's on Crossmix, it seems to do it a bit better as well. And it looks like some changes have been made to the other systems too. There was a battery management bug that plagued earlier models, and this seems to have been fixed on the Smart Pro S. The fan cuts to 0 instantly on sleep, and there's no significant Wi-Fi drain over extended periods. I left this in sleep mode for over an hour, and the battery just didn't move. It's one of those rare moments where doing nothing actually resulted in success. So where does this leave us? Well, look, if you're somebody who likes tinkering, who likes having complete control over every aspect of your device, and you don't mind spending your time configuring things to your exact specifications, the stock operating system is actually quite adequate. And of course, there's going to be custom operating systems coming along in the very near future. Crossmix may or may not be one of them, we'll have to wait and see. But I've had loads of comments from people who don't want that. They just want to buy a console and have it work. One of the reasons that they buy into Linux in the first place is that they don't have that horrid setup time. Now, they don't want to spend time scraping artwork. They don't want to spend time sourcing games. This Crossmix card allows you to have that pick up and play experience that you think you're going to get with all of the other handhelds that say they ship with 10,000 games on it. To me, this is the only acceptable option for a pick up and play experience, unlike the generic cards that you get from other retailers. Here, you've got a proper SanDisk card, and I can't tell you how important that is. And if you're one of those people, if you've been struggling to enter the handheld emulation space because there's just too much setup, then this mix of a good operating system, a well-structured library, a good SD card, and ease of use is probably the entry point that you've needed. That's what I think anyway, and I would love to know what you think in the comments below. Are you comfortable running a modified firmware fork, or would you prefer something that's a little bit more, I don't know, official maybe? Have you tried Crossmix on any of the other devices, on the Smart Pro, basically? And what was it like? What did you think about it? Am I the only person who spent an entire evening forensically comparing cloud rendering in Goldeneye across two identical devices, like some sort of deranged pixel meteorologist? Thanks ever so much for watching. If you found this useful, please do hit the subscribe button and leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, there's only one thing left to say: happy gaming.